Late one night, a man was deposited at the emergency room door. At the time, he wasn't breathing, his heart wasn't beating, his friends beat a rather hasty retreat. The emergency room personnel came out, got his heart started, did CPR, and eventually he was stabilized in the intensive care unit. Unfortunately, during the period without oxygen, he'd suffered massive brain damage, and it was the opinion of the doctors that his brain function was completely and irreversibly lost. Turns out at a large staff meeting, the personnel who were there fell into three major groups. The first group was led by the neurologist. He said, "Look at his brain. It's obvious his brain isn't functioning. He's brain dead. We should pronounce him dead and go on about our business." The second group said, "Well, we agree with group number one. The brain isn't going to function again. But look at his chest moving up and down. Listen to his heart beating. The man's heart is beating. He's obviously not dead." They said, "Nevertheless, since we can't do anything about it, the appropriate thing to do would be to stop the ventilator, stop life support, and allow him to die. He's not dead, but we should allow him to die." Then there was this third group of physicians, the smallest of the three groups. He said, "We agree with group number two. If his heart's beating, he's obviously not dead, but we're physicians. And as physicians, our duty is to prolong life, not to ask about the quality of the life. So we think that the ventilator should continue." Now, the striking thing about this case is they were all in agreement on all the medical facts, and yet they had no idea how to handle the case. They couldn't decide whether the patient was dead or alive. If he was alive, they couldn't decide whether to continue life support or stop the treatment. In our end-of-life discussion, we're going to talk about the major issues that have arisen over the past 3 or 4 decades. The first is going to be that debate between the first and second groups of physicians, whether a patient is dead when there's an irreversible loss of all functions of the brain. Our first job will be to address the definition of death. Now, once we've done that, we'll move on to a second substantive segment where we're going to look at the argument between that second and third groups of physicians. Assuming we have a living patient, are there times when it's appropriate to allow the dying process to go on? We'll identify 4 conceptual issues that define the mainstream consensus about how to care for a still living but dying patient. Once we've done that, we'll move on to another segment that really raises public policy issues. Unfortunately, many people who are terminally ill are not able to speak for themselves. They're not able to make their own judgments, so somebody has to speak for them. We'll look at the ethical controversies that arise when somebody else makes a decision about a critically ill patient, and the rest of us looking on think that the decision maker has gotten it wrong, is way off base, is willing to allow a patient to die who should still live, or is insisting on life support for a patient who should be allowed to die.